You don't expect to wake up one morning thinking you'll end the day in a hospital bed, but that's exactly what happened to me. And let me tell you, lying there, hooked up to machines, staring at the ceiling, I realized something powerful. It wasn't just about my health. It was about my choices, my mindset, and the direction of my life. And the truth is, you don't have to go through what I went through to learn what I learned. Tonight, I want to show you why that moment in the hospital became the greatest wake-up call of my life and how it can be yours too. You know, when I think back to the days and weeks before I landed in that hospital, there's one word that explains it all: complacency. That quiet, sneaky little enemy that convinces you everything is fine when in reality, the cracks are forming right beneath your feet. Complacency doesn't scream at you, it whispers. It tells you, skip the workout, you'll catch up tomorrow. It tells you, eat whatever you want, it won't matter this once. It tells you, don't worry, you've got time. And then suddenly, time runs out and you wake up to the consequences you thought you could outrun. The truth is, we don't fall into disaster all at once. It's usually a slow drift. Think about it like this: no one wakes up and instantly finds themselves completely out of shape, exhausted, overwhelmed, or spiritually empty. It happens through tiny decisions that pile up day after day, year after year, until they finally crash down on you. That was me. I ignored the signs. I brushed off the fatigue, the stress, the signals my body was trying to send me, and I told myself, I'll handle it later. Well, later came in the form of a hospital bed, and I realized in that moment, complacency is one of the most dangerous habits a person can ever adopt. What's so deceptive about it is that complacency often wears the mask of comfort. It makes you feel like you're safe, like you're okay, like nothing urgent needs to change. But comfort, when it turns into complacency, becomes a trap. And the price tag for living in that trap is always higher than we think. Some of you might not end up in a hospital because of it, but maybe you'll end up with broken dreams, missed opportunities, or a wasted calling. That's the cost of letting complacency win. I had to face the fact that I let good enough replace my pursuit of excellence. And that's not just about physical health. It applies to every part of life. It's easy to go through the motions, to settle for average, to accept mediocrity in the name of balance or taking it easy. But deep down, you know when you're settling. You know when you've lowered the bar just enough to make life more comfortable but less meaningful. And if you don't fight that, one day, that comfort will turn into regret. What shocked me most as I was lying in that hospital bed was realizing how preventable it all was. The situation I found myself in wasn't some random accident. It was the result of countless small choices. And that's when it hit me. Life doesn't usually punish you in one big blow. It punishes you with the bill for years of neglect. The body keeps the score. The mind keeps the score. Even your faith and relationships keep the score. Eventually, you cash in on whatever you've been investing in, whether that's discipline or complacency. And here's the wake-up call I want to give you, so you don't have to learn it the hard way like I did. If you're coasting, you're not safe, you're sliding, because there's no such thing as neutral in life. You're either growing stronger or you're getting weaker. You're either pushing forward or drifting backward. Complacency tries to convince you that standing still is fine, but standing still in a moving world means you're already falling behind. I know it sounds tough, but I don't say this to discourage you. I say it to wake you up. Because once you see complacency for what it really is, you can fight back against it. You can decide today that you're done ignoring the small things, done putting off what matters, done living like tomorrow is guaranteed. The fact is, we don't know how much time we have, so why waste it living halfway when we could be living fully? That hospital stay was my reality check. It forced me to confront the truth that I had let comfort disguise itself as security. But the good news is, that same moment also gave me clarity. I understood that every single day, every single choice is an opportunity to reject complacency and embrace growth. And if you do that, if you decide right now that good enough is no longer good enough, you won't just avoid ending up in a hospital bed like I did. You'll actually start living with the kind of purpose, strength, and freedom that complacency could never offer. Because the bottom line is this: complacency feels safe, but it's actually the fastest way to lose everything that matters. when I was in that hospital staring up at the ceiling with nothing but my own thoughts, one lesson became crystal clear to me: motivation had failed me. I'd relied on motivation for too long. I told myself I'd get serious about my health, my discipline, my habits whenever I felt like it. The problem is, feelings come and go. Motivation is like a spark. It flares up when you're inspired, but it fades the moment life gets hard, the moment you're tired, the moment temptation shows up. And if your entire life depends on staying motivated, you're in trouble, because life will always test your resolve when your motivation is at its weakest. What actually holds you together when everything in you wants to quit is discipline. Discipline is the quiet, unglamorous commitment to do what needs to be done, whether you feel like it or not. It's the alarm clock going off at 5 a.m. and you dragging yourself out of bed, even though your body screams no. It's saying no to junk food when you've had a long day and every craving in you says yes. It's choosing to sit down and pray, or read, or learn when your mind would rather scroll, drift, or waste away hours. Motivation says, I'll do it when I feel it. Discipline says, I'll do it because I said I would. That difference right there can determine whether you end up thriving or whether you end up where I was, burned out, broken down, and completely depleted. The irony is, most of us wait for motivation to strike like lightning before we act. We think we need to feel inspired before we can move. But the truth is, action comes first and feelings follow. When you live with discipline, you stop being a slave to your emotions. You stop being tossed around by the ups and downs of life. You take control, because discipline isn't about how you feel in the moment. It's about who you want to become in the future. And that's why it's so powerful. I learned the hard way that small lapses in discipline add up. Skipping workouts, eating whatever I wanted, telling myself I'd catch up tomorrow. It was always easy in the moment, but it was costing me my health. The same principle applies in every area of life. You neglect discipline in your finances, and one day you wake up broke. You neglect discipline in your relationships, and one day you realize they've fallen apart. You neglect discipline in your mindset, and one day you wake up bitter, angry, and confused about how you got there. The results always come later, but they come. And when they do, you either thank discipline or regret the lack of it. Some people think discipline sounds like punishment, like a life stripped of freedom, but it's actually the opposite. Discipline is what creates freedom, because when you've built a life on discipline, you're not chained to impulses, you're not enslaved to your cravings, you're not dependent on fleeting motivation. You're free to pursue bigger goals, free to live with strength, free to endure hardships without collapsing. Discipline is the ultimate form of self-respect, because it means you trust yourself to follow through no matter what. I remember lying in that hospital bed, replaying all the moments I'd chosen the easy way out, all the times I had said, I'll start tomorrow, and I realized tomorrow never comes for people who don't practice discipline today. That was my wake-up call. I didn't need another motivational video, another pep talk, another emotional high. I needed a system. I needed routines. I needed standards that I would hold myself to whether I felt like it or not, because that's what wins in the long run, not feelings, but habits. Think about the people you admire most: athletes, leaders, innovators, warriors. They don't live on motivation alone. They live on discipline. They understand that while motivation is great for getting you started, discipline is what keeps you going when everything gets hard, and that's where most people fail. They confuse a temporary feeling for a lasting foundation. Motivation gets you in the gym once. Discipline keeps you going back for years. Motivation gets you to pick up a book. Discipline makes you a lifelong learner. Motivation gets you to say a prayer when you're desperate. Discipline builds a life of faith that sustains you through every season. If you want to avoid the kind of wake-up call I had, you can't wait for motivation. You have to build discipline now. It's not glamorous, it's not flashy, and no one is going to cheer you on for brushing your teeth, getting to bed on time, or keeping promises to yourself. But those tiny, boring disciplines compound into strength, and that strength will carry you when motivation disappears. The lesson I walked away with is simple: motivation might get you to the starting line, but discipline is what gets you across the finish line. When I think back to that hospital bed, I can't ignore one more truth that hit me like a freight train. The people I had been surrounding myself with played a massive role in where I ended up. We like to think our choices are entirely our own, and yes, we are responsible for them, but the reality is that the company we keep either raises our standards or lowers them. The voices around you influence the voice inside you, and if you're not careful, you'll start adopting the habits, the mindset, and the lifestyle of the people you spend most of your time with. I had people in my life who, instead of challenging me to do better, made it easy to stay comfortable. They'd say things like, "Relax, you're fine, don't take it so seriously." And because that was what I wanted to hear, I listened. I surrounded myself with people who validated complacency instead of pushing me toward discipline. And over time, that became my normal. It felt safe, it felt comfortable, and it felt easy, but it wasn't healthy. That hospital visit was proof that the environment I allowed myself to stay in was shaping my future in ways I didn't even notice. Here's the thing, you cannot rise above the level of your circle. If you spend your time with people who coast, who don't value growth, who laugh off responsibility, it becomes harder and harder to live differently. Why? Because human beings are wired for belonging. We want to fit in. And when fitting in means lowering your standards, eventually you'll do it, even if you swore you never would. On the other hand, when you're surrounded by people who push themselves, who strive for more, who take care of their bodies, their minds, their families, you'll feel that pull too. You'll be inspired to step up, not step back. Think about athletes. They train with people who are faster, stronger, and sharper than they are. Why? Because competition sharpens them. It forces them to rise to the occasion. You put that same athlete in a lazy environment where no one cares about training, and watch how quickly their edge dulls. The same principle applies to every one of us. If you want to grow, if you want to stay disciplined, if you want to avoid ending up where I did, you have to intentionally choose a circle that lifts you higher. What struck me in the hospital wasn't just how I had let my own standards slip, but how no one around me was calling me out on it. Not one person said, "Hey, you're drifting." Not one person said, "You need to take this seriously." And that's not their fault. It was mine for choosing the easy company instead of the right company. The right people in your life are not always the ones who make you feel good in the moment. Sometimes they make you uncomfortable because they challenge you, because they expect more from you, because they refuse to let you settle. And that discomfort, that's growth. I realized I had to start making hard choices about who I allowed to influence me. Not everyone deserves a front row seat in your life. Some people are draining you, pulling you backward, keeping you in cycles of mediocrity, and you don't even see it until it's too late. If you want to know where your life is heading, just look at the people you're walking with. Because your environment is shaping you whether you admit it or not. It doesn't mean you cut everyone off cold. It means you become intentional. You find mentors, leaders, friends who live out the values you aspire to. You align yourself with people whose habits and disciplines you respect. You choose to be in rooms where you're the least experienced, the least knowledgeable, the one who has the most to learn, because that's where you'll grow. And yes, it's uncomfortable. Yes, it can be intimidating, but I'd rather feel that discomfort than end up back in a hospital bed, regretting that I let the wrong voices guide my steps. You can't control every circumstance in life, but you can control who you let influence you. And make no mistake, influence is powerful. It can either keep you stuck or propel you forward. The people you surround yourself with are either your anchor or your wings. And the bottom line is this: if you want to change your life, change your circle. Lying in that hospital bed, I'll be honest, I could have seen it as the lowest point of my life. I could have wallowed in the frustration, the fear, the disappointment in myself, and for a moment I did. But as the hours passed, something shifted. I started to see that maybe this wasn't just a setback, it was a setup. Maybe this wasn't the end of my story, but the beginning of a different one. Sometimes the hardest moments in life aren't meant to break us, they're meant to wake us up. A crisis can be the very thing that forces us to stop, to reassess, and to finally change direction. Most people try to avoid pain at all costs, and I get it. Nobody wants to suffer. Nobody signs up for hardship. But the truth is, it's often in those painful moments that we discover what we're really made of. Comfort rarely transforms anyone. Growth doesn't usually come when life is smooth, when everything is easy, when we're coasting along. Growth comes when the ground shakes beneath our feet, when the illusions we've been living under collapse, when life leaves us with no choice but to either step up or give up. That hospital stay was painful, but it was also clarifying. It stripped away the excuses, the distractions, and the lies I had been telling myself, and it forced me to confront who I really was and who I wanted to become. What I realized in that room is that pain is a teacher. It teaches lessons that comfort never will. Pain shows you where you've ignored warning signs. Pain reveals what truly matters when all the noise is gone. Pain humbles you, reminds you that you're not invincible, that you don't have unlimited time to get it right. And as much as we try to run from it, sometimes the very thing we think will break us is the thing that saves us. I could look back now and resent that experience, but I don't. I'm grateful for it. Because without that crisis, I might still be drifting. Without that crisis, I might still be settling for complacency, mistaking motivation for discipline, surrounding myself with the wrong people. Without that crisis, I might never have found the urgency to change. It was the jolt I needed, the reality check I couldn't ignore, the wake-up call that shook me into action. And sometimes that's exactly what a crisis is meant to do, not to punish you, but to redirect you. Think about history. Some of the greatest leaders, innovators, and world changers didn't rise out of comfort, they rose out of crisis. They faced setbacks, failures, obstacles, and instead of letting those moments define them, they let those moments refine them. Crisis became the fire that forged their strength. It's the same principle in our own lives. When you face a breaking point, you can either collapse under it or use it as the foundation for something new. I'm not saying every crisis is pleasant or easy. Far from it. But I am saying that you have a choice in how you respond. You can let the pain paralyze you, or you can let it propel you. You can get stuck in the hospital bed, figuratively or literally, feeling sorry for yourself, or you can rise from it with a new clarity, a new determination, a new commitment to live differently. That's what I chose, and it changed everything. And here's what I want you to understand. You don't have to wait for a crisis to start living with urgency. You don't have to wait until life knocks you flat on your back to finally pay attention. But if you do find yourself in that place, don't waste it. Don't waste the lessons. Don't waste the chance to start fresh. Because sometimes the worst day of your life can become the best turning point if you decide to let it. So, while the hospital was a hard chapter for me, it was also the most transformative. It was the moment I stopped drifting and started deciding, and that's the gift a crisis can give you. If you let it, it can become the catalyst that changes everything. Because the truth is, what looks like the end can actually be the beginning. So when I look back at that hospital bed, I don't see it as a tragedy anymore. I see it as a turning point. It reminded me that complacency will rob you of your potential, that discipline will always outlast fleeting motivation, that the people around you can either pull you down or lift you higher, and that sometimes the crisis you fear the most is the very thing that sets you free. My challenge to you is simple. Don't wait for your own wake-up call. Don't wait until life forces you into a corner. Decide now to live with urgency, with discipline, with purpose, and with the right people by your side. Because when you do, you won't just survive the hard moments, you'll turn them into the very fuel that drives you forward.